Hey Clear Lake peeps, Ross England here with Clear Lake Guide Service and your lake report for conditions, etc. for Clear Lake for March. I think I'd have this down by now. March 10th, 2022. So here we are. Been kind of an interesting week. Winter kind of sprung back at us a little bit from a perspective that we've had frost warnings the last 3 mornings and actually had some frost, and then tomorrow morning is supposed to have another frost warning. So we'll see. Morning lows have been cool. The temperatures have kind of been all over the board. The last day we fished, it actually was approaching 70 degrees with no wind. So I mean, it was an exceptionally nice day. Definitely more spring-like than winter-like, but you know, we know it's not over yet, so we'll see what happens. No change whatsoever as far as lake level. It's still hanging in there, just a tad above plus 0.5 Rumsey. The water temperature, I started out the last couple days that I fished, one day went out of 5th Street in Lakeport, one day I went out of the county park, and both of them are about the same. County park was the last one, and I got 51.7 degrees for starting temperature, and then an ending temperature of, I saw 57, and in a couple areas I saw 58, and that was quitting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So still probably had another half an hour where it could have edged up even into almost 59 degrees, but we'll just call the afternoon up on the upper end of the lake, 57, 58 for afternoon highs. Probably still a little bit cooler down in the mid-lake section and the lower arms. Haven't been down there, so can't tell you exactly what it is down there. Water clarity, moving all around the place. One day you'll be in a place and the water will be nice and green colored and you can see 3.5 feet. And then the wind comes up or whatever happens. You go back to the same area the next day and it's a little bit stained. You lose about 2 feet of visibility. I would say average for what I saw this week was about, we'll be generous and say 2 feet. Some of the areas pretty brownish looking, but not that coffee brown, just a stain from I think really what's happening is, with as shallow, especially the upper end of the lake is, any kind of wind event at all is just stirring up the bottom. And I think that's why you see one day it looks one way, one day it looks another, then the next day it's back to where it was. Is just because, if it's calm, it settles down pretty quick overnight. So those are the lake conditions. Launch ramps, no changes. People still are asking me about, whether they can get into a place that they know about in the Keys, and I can't tell you. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the Keys. I don't spend much time down there. The last time I picked up a client down there was probably 9 years ago. It's been a long time, and it'll probably be another 9 years before I pick up another client down there. I talked to Ed Legan, one of the other guides on the lake who lives down in the Oaks, and he said, some of the canals are navigable, some of them aren't. So, as far as if you've rented a house or something, for upcoming tournaments or a vacation, I can't tell you which ones have water in them or which ones don't or where the house is. So the best thing is to just deal with whoever you rented the place from, and hopefully they'll be honest with you. The launch ramps around the lake, no change. Lucerne, still closed. Keeling Park, still closed. The other launch ramps have been okay, so haven't really heard of any issues. So there's your launching conditions for now. People have asked me about getting in and out of the casino. Their launch ramp is usable, and I'm told that they did a little bit of dredging to deepen the canal a little bit to get out of there. So probably going to be okay in there. I have not personally been in there, but that's what I've heard from several different people, so I'll take that for what it is. So I believe those are your conditions. The activities coming up this week and is one, it's like the 38th annual, somewhere in that range. It's an open team tournament event, Saturday and Sunday. It's been called a number of things over the years, anywhere from Bruno's to the current iteration of it is a Chamber of Commerce tournament. So it's a long-standing event up here. It's a fun event. It's an event that's open to everybody. 2-day event, used to draw 200 boats. It'll probably still draw 80 to 100 boats, especially with good weather this coming weekend. So that's the big deal for this coming weekend. And then there's another big event that comes up the following weekend, but we'll talk about that next week. So those are kind of the conditions and what's going on and what you need to watch out for. Fishing, it kind of is a little bit up and down in my opinion. You know, we saw some good weights come out of the event last weekend. There were a lot of 20-pound bags, very few bags over 25 pounds, which for this time of year, you know, kind of leaves you scratching your head a little bit. I think there was one 8-pounder, there was several 7s. Most of the big fish that people weighed in were 5s. Few more 6s, less 7s, and like I said, I think it was 1 8. So the big fish just aren't showing. You know, we kind of had up and down results with our fishing this past week. You know, we caught some nice fish, but it just was different. You know, what happened the previous week that seemed like it was so well dialed in seemed less dialed in this week. So kind of had to adjust, kind of had to move around, do some things. Some bites that were really good changed on us and weren't quite so good, and then we found bites in other areas doing other things that work. So what we caught fish on this past week, pretty much the same thing we've been catching fish on, with one exception. We caught fish on rip baits, we caught fish on drop shot, we caught fish on shaky heads, we caught fish on, what am I missing? Oh, LVs, which we hadn't been throwing a whole lot of. And I actually caught my first swim bait fish this year. I actually caught 2 of them. So, like a real swim bait, not an underspin. And that was the other thing we caught fish on was underspins. So our depth, we're still monkeying around in less than 7 feet of water, and a lot of our fish, depending on the time of day and the particular stuff that we're fishing, they can be as shallow as 2 feet from what we've been doing. But I'd say probably the majority of them are between 3 and 5 feet. There's probably fish out behind me, but I'm not fishing out there. And the few guys that I've seen that are running around, you know, out there outside the buoy line type stuff, you know, I see them staring at their front facing sonar, and I see them trying. I just haven't seen a whole lot of them being caught, and I know that's not the reality. It's just the ones that I've seen doing it, where they've done it, they weren't that successful. So that's your report for this week. Those of you who are still interested in trying to figure out what's going on with crappie fishing, they're still catching crappie. You know, they're down on both ends of the lake. We've caught a few incidental fish here and there, but for the most part, not what we normally would. It's, you know, it's still a little bit early, but then the other thing is you have to remember, usually on the upper end of the lake when these fish move the crappie move up, they move up into tules that are, in the water, and there's not a whole lot of tules with any depth in the water on this end of the lake. So not really reporting much on crappie because I'm just not around people who are fishing for them. So probably the better bet is to be down on the lower end of the lake between, the two arms down there, the two deeper arms, and try to figure something out down there. I will say that there are a number of people that I have run into or talked to or watched, and they're using their front-facing sonar to find crappie and catch them. So, who'd ever thought you were going to spend that kind of money for electronics to do that? But I guess this crappie fishing is a lot more serious than I really thought. So that's your report. Hope you all have a good weekend. We'll catch up with you next week. Appreciate all the comments. Appreciate those of you that take the time to watch the whole thing and hit the like button, and kind of puts an extra quart of gas in the tank, which right now is really useful. Talk to you next week.